I'd like to call to order our regular Community Redevelopment Agency meeting. The time is 6:05 p.m. and the date is February 14th. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Chair Lawson,
Here.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier, Commissioner McCoy,
Here.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Present.
Commissioner Botel. Here. Also present on the dais, Attorney Chris Smith with Pittman Law Group, Jonathan Evans, CRA Executive Director, Scott Evans, Director of Planning and Development, Anita Jenkins, Director of Neighborhood Services, Shirley Desir, Interim CRA Clerk.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Can we have a moment of silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Dr. Botel?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have any additions, deletions, substitutions?
None from staff, Mr. Chair.
Disclosures from the commissioners?
Chair.
Commissioner Botel.
I have had conversations with representatives from the Valari Group.
Thank you. Any additional comments? Commissioners, would we want to entertain bringing a regular agenda item 6A over to consent, or do we want to leave that in its current place?
I'm fine with moving it.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
that was my sentiments, but I've spoken to staff, and I think if I could just have 2 minutes to explain what I wanted to say on this item. We took a step last year to decide to bring the applications as they become ready, as opposed to letting the applications reach 5 or 6 or however many. But I was hoping that, we can certainly improve that added to consent, but I hope we can have a conversation about allowing staff the opportunity to approve these administratively, since there's already a contract in place and there's already an obligation that they perform. But I was hoping that we can do this in light of the fact that there could be small businesses that want to take advantage of this, and to wait 3 months or God knows how long could present a cash flow issue. And certainly I wanted to see if the board, relative to this item, wanted to kind of give staff the direction to administratively approve these, since they've already met the requirements for the grant program.
And I actually agree, Commissioner McCoy. I was actually going to ask that during my comments, if we could bring this to the administrative level, because as a small business owner, I just know that this can be a constraint on waiting for it to go through across the board. So if we want to have that discussion, I'd love to add that as a discussion item, or just give clear direction from the board at the end. Commissioner Botel, go
Mr. Chair, I
ahead.
think we can just give clear direction.
I agree.
That'd be fine.
Well, Mr. Chair, so
Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
that's cool. So I'm okay. Let's move 6A to the consent, but I want to see if staff has, anything they want to add to it, to our conversation about moving it to an administrative approval level. So 6A, I'm okay with going to consent, and we can bring that up in commissioner comments, I guess.
Well, actually, if we can add a discussion item, I actually wouldn't mind, because if we can get clarity, this will kind of make it more seamless moving forward. So if we want to add a discussion item to the end of the agenda, I would not mind having that discussion as well.
Well, unless there's something that they wanted to particularly add, because when I brought it up in the agenda review, they more or less kind of said, that's not something that I think is unachievable. That's not a bad idea. So I want to,
Okay.
if they want to say that they're okay with it, do we really need to discuss it?
So, Mr. Evans, in your comments, we can discuss that during your executive director comments. Is that okay? Mr. Scott Evans? So during the executive director comments, we'll have that discussion, and we'll just kind of get clear direction for you. Let the record reflect, Commissioner Pro Tem Lanier is on the dais. Motion to adopt agenda.
So moved. Second.
Motion been made and properly seconded. Madam Clerk?
Commissioner Botel.
Yeah.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier,
Yes.
Chair Lawson.
Yes.
That vote passes 5-0.
Thank you. Consent agenda. Consent agenda is approved by a single majority vote. Items on consent are to be removed by open discussion at the request of any commissioner. Business on the consent agenda is routine and business of nature. Is there any commissioner that wants to remove an item from consent?
No, but we're adding 6A to consent, Mr. Chair, correct?
Correct. We're going to approve the consent agenda with the addition of 6A.
Motion to approve with the addition.
Second.
Motion been made and properly seconded. Madam Clerk?
Yeah. Yes.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
Yes.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier, Chair Lawson.
Yes,
That vote passes 5-0.
thank you. Going into discussion, 5A, Madam Clerk.
Expiration of agreement with the Valari Group to sell CRA-owned land in exchange for public parking within the new structure proposed for the redevelopment of the Sands Hotel and adjacent properties. The acceptance of public comment cards are now closed, Mr. Chair. We have no comment cards.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Scott Evans.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. This item, on January 25th, the previously extended agreement with the Valari Group expired, and that agreement was to sell CRA property, which is located on Beach Court. And the agreement provided that if the developer, who is the Valari Group, did not meet certain conditions, that it would automatically expire. The property of reference is shown on the screen above. I apologize, it's not that bright. But it is a small passive park that is located within the development envelope of the previously submitted redevelopment concept for the Sands Hotel and adjacent properties. The Valari Group has submitted a request to obtain a second extension of this agreement. They submitted that on January 22nd. So we have scheduled this as a discussion item for the board, although the item has the contract has already automatically expired. Since he did submit the letter previous to that, we wanted to bring this to the board for that discussion. The conditions that have not been met as a part of the agreement include obtaining site plan approval, submittal and approval of building permits, and the closing on construction financing. The Valari Group did meet with the city and CRA several times during the past 4 years, but they have not proceeded with even the first step of that project. Additionally, the property that is shown in blue, property that's shown in blue on the screen, this was owned by Mr. Late Charles Dietrich. And this property was, he was a partner of the previous Valari Group proposal. And as you can see, that property is directly adjacent to the property that's owned by the CRA, the green one. And then the Sands Hotel is on the other side. That property has since been sold to a new owner who is no longer in direct partnership with the original development proposal, which prevents them from being able to proceed with the project as planned in the original agreement. So staff is recommending the board take no action related to this agreement since it is automatically expired. And we would also like to solicit comments from the board. This property has limited value for redevelopment on its own. And we would seek your feedback on the proposed next steps when we would propose that we bring this forward to the development community to make it available to adjacent property owners should they wish to bring forward a new development proposal in the future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Scott Evans. Questions, comments from the board?
Mr. Chair,
Dr. Botel, go ahead.
I think it goes without saying that we are all anxious to see this property developed. It's been in limbo now for at least 6 years, probably longer. And I just wonder, is there anything we can do? I mean, I know it's not incumbent upon us to get into negotiations of any kind with developers, but is there anything the CRA or the city can do to encourage the Valari Group to work with the owner of what you position here as the Charlie Dietrich property, the property in blue, so that this project can move forward? It's just been such a long time, and we need the parking desperately at the beach, and we really want to see the improvement to that property. It's a really disgrace. I have a question about the Dietrich property as well, but if you could answer that one first.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Evans.
We have requested that those two property owners speak, and I believe they have, although they're not in agreement on how to proceed. I think perhaps if we put the right conditions in, if the board chooses to make this property available again, that we can make it in the best interest of the surrounding property owners to cooperate, because that might enhance their ability to receive a favorable recommendation when this, if this board elects to review new proposals in the future.
Well, I certainly would encourage my colleagues to move in that direction because we've got to do something with that property. We have to see it improved. It's really a disgrace. My other question is the Charlie Dietrich property. There were numerous code violations on that property. Have they been addressed by the new owner?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
Yes, I believe the new owner has been in discussions with the code enforcement department, and I know that he has been working to pay all of those. I don't know if they're entirely paid off, but he's in the process.
Okay.
And I believe some of them have been paid in order to remove those liens.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McCoy?
Mr. Scott Evans, thank you for that. Did you have a recommendation?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
Yes, staff is recommending we allow the agreement to remain expired, and that we bring this back to the board for consideration of making it available again for a new development proposal.
And can you elaborate on how you arrived at that?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Evans.
Because the property is of a limited size, the redevelopment potential of it on its own is very limited. We think it's a better tool to help other properties around it redevelop in a much larger manner. So we're proposing that it be made available to adjacent property owners or a new property owner who might purchase all of other surrounding properties, so that we can try and attract a large-scale redevelopment rather than trying to just develop this one small piece on its own.
Follow up.
Go ahead, sir.
So following the letter that we received requesting an extension, was there a conversation that occurred between staff and the requester?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
Yes, we contacted Mr. Bellari. I expressed the importance of being able to have a partnership with the property that's in between this property and his property. And then I believe they did talk. However, they did not come to an agreement. So Mr. Bellari expressed to me that he does wish to try and redevelop the property in the future, regardless of the outcome of this. And as you know, he has requested to continue the option to purchase this property, but since he has not met the conditions and since he is not in agreement with the adjacent property at this time, staff is recommending the agreement expire.
Mr. McCoy, go ahead.
Thank you. So, Mr. Scott Evans, was there any specific time that he was asking for an extension? Did he, I mean, it's not included in the letter, but I'm speaking of in your conversation. If he's needing 3 months, if he's needing 6 months, because in theory, if we do go the route that you're recommending and allow it to be expired, I guess we don't have to allow it to be expired. It's already expired. But if we choose not to renew it, to put out a solicitation would take us 6 months in and of itself.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
Yes, the solicitation would take some time, which would include a board workshop or discussion to decide the details of that opportunity. The agreement, since it requires site plan approval, submittal of building permits, receipt of building permits, it would take at least 2 years if they started today. So I would assume that his request would be for that 2 years, because that's the minimum amount of time. If he started today on a development proposal, that would be required to meet those conditions in the existing agreement.
Okay. So I understand 2 years, but I was trying to find out, did he ask you particularly during this phone conversation the amount of time that he was looking for?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Mr.
Yes, I don't recall that we talked about a specific time.
The reason I'm asking is because if we're not going to do anything, which we have been kind of infamous to have these kind of development projects to just sit by the wayside. If he's asking for 6 months, that in theory would stop us from being able to put out a solicitation on this. And I would like to see, because I don't see how, if the property to the south is not prospectively looking to be developed, the property to the north is not, that I know of, then what's the real harm? Because there's nothing other than probably a triplex, and that's pushing it. If you could put it on a small postage stamp lot like that. What I don't want to do is close the door to what could potentially occur, but I would only proceed with the option of doing an extension under very specific and very strenuous circumstances, because we've approved a 2019 solicitation in 2020. That's 4 years that it's just been since it's been approved. 5 years if you count when staff first started working on putting out a solicitation. So I'm not exactly thrilled about being in a situation like this, but sometimes a delayed decision, or sometimes not the best decision, is better than no decision whatsoever. And I want to at least have more of a dialogue as to what this expectation of an extension is. If it's 6 months, I'm inclined to want to support it, but certainly not another 2 year. And I mean 6 months to acquire the necessary parcel. And that's my first part. So my next option is, I don't know if you recall or go back to the solicitation, which was 5 years ago in 2019. Was there, that you recall, Mr. Scott Evans, the provisions to go with the next ranked firm or the alternate firm?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
Yes, the firm that placed second, the CRA board approved a resolution directing staff to work with them to bring forward a development proposal similar to what they were talking about. The second proposal didn't require our land to proceed. So the decision was to award it to the highest ranked response, as I recall, because they were the only submittal that needed the CRA's property in order to redevelop. We did meet with the second proposer, and he has developed plans for his potential redevelopment proposal, which included the parking lot and properties directly west of our subject site. That's this area here. And he's actually preparing to make a application to the city for site plan approval for redevelopment of that project that originally was brought forward in that RFP process.
And is that the property where we currently use for parking?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
Yes, that where the CRA currently leases land adjacent to where the proposed temporary fire station is, and on the land that we lease is 40 parking spaces that we provide for overflow parking.
Okay. I would like to see if we can have more of a dialogue as to what the expectations is in very strict requirements, because I don't know that you said it yourself. You're recommending that we let it remain expired. We have the option to exercise an extension, correct?
Mr. Chair.
So,
Yes, I believe this board can determine what they'd like to do.
Okay, I'm very much open to it. It'd be great if he can come in and give us an explanation and explain to us what he needs to see if it's even palatable, because outside of that, I mean, I'm not under the belief that we need to do 2 years again. That's just too long. And I mean, think about the lost potential that we've had and the opportunity cost that we've given up with this property. So that's something that we can't even recover. And as I mentioned to you, there has to be some sort of performance metrics or some sort of payments to have our land basically off of off of the books of being redeveloped. And that would be one of the conditions that I would propose. So that's all I have with regard to that.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. Pro Tem?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question in regards to um, the encumbrance or any title defects that could affect the marketability of this project. Is there anything that would affect the marketability of it? I mean, I think I asked. Let me stop. I asked these questions in the agenda review because I know that with this project being 4 years, I mean, the marina took 8, and we're still going with that. So that to this board should not be really the issue. I think I remember the fact that the original owner died, Fred Villari, and that there was some, kind of stoppage in some of the negotiations because of the fact that the gentleman did pass away. But what I did want to know is, have there been any interest from other developers for this property? And if we've taken this long to be able to, not negotiate, it seems, I too would like to hear from the developer to see what is it that he asked for an extension for. Did he ask for an extension for a new project, same project? We're not sure. We don't know that information. But I certainly would like to have an opportunity to have them to either say something to staff or to us in regards to what their intentions are. But you can't answer that question in regards to any outstanding encumbrances or anything that would affect us marketing this project, this property, I should say.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
we don't have any encumbrances on our property. As far as what exists on the Sands Hotel or the Dietrich property, that's something that I would have to research to see what exists at this time as far as liens or issues or encumbrances.
I would certainly like to know that as well. And then two, I think one of the questions is how do we safeguard from this happening again with these type of projects? We have or been notorious for starting a project, getting it in motion, and then 4 years with this one, 8 years with the marina. Later, we're still trying to get something going. So I really want to have a conversation with the staff and with the CRA director, and how does this not happen again? Because this is the second project, and probably even more than that, that we've had this issue with starting a project and then we no longer, we're back to square one with it, regardless of whatever it was that happened. So I certainly want to get some feedback from the staff and the CRA director in regards to how do we avoid this in the future. CRA director.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
Just to provide some additional commentary to the discussion, is that this property was utilized as a point of leverage to facilitate the redevelopment of the Sands Hotel. And so the CRA's involvement was to bring the asset to the table for the purposes of a private development. It wasn't a development per se that the CRA was going to be leading the endeavor. But to your point, Vice Chair, there was a situation where the principal spokesperson and the one that was moving the project forward did pass away. And so as a family goes through that process, then the son has taken up the responsibility to help facilitate that. Now, I know that the ownership of the Dietrich property now complicates the situation moving forward, because now that developer that has that parcel right in between has a great leverage point, because what was originally discussed in that development can't come to fruition unless there is a situation where they're partners or they in fact sell. I think moving forward with parcels that we bring to any type of prospective relationship, I think the city needs to, or the CRA needs to incur some fee or have a development partner that would pay a lease payment or a payment for whatever it is that is determined to be fair and equitable to help facilitate that if there's extensions that are provided, or if there is opportunities that things are not moving in the direction, or the developer picks up and leaves, that the city CRA benefits monetarily from the relationship. Because if there was a lease payment that was currently running with this property, then it probably would have helped been an incentive to say, we've got to pay X amount of thousands of dollars every month to the city CRA for holding this property. And if we don't, and in this situation, the contract expired, at least the CRA commission can look back to your constituents and say, well, during that time, we collected X amount of thousands of dollars that we could utilize for other activities in the CRA. So I think for moving forward, I think we definitely have to have some type of monetary element that's incorporated in lease agreements if we are bringing properties to the table. And you may give some leeway for the purposes of development timelines or what have you, but if there are extensions or opportunities that additional time is needed, that there is a monetary payment as a result of that. So that would be my recommendation for the board to consider moving forward in any type of relationship such as this.
Thank you, sir, for that. Chair?
Pro Tem, go ahead.
Yeah, because that sounds like a better idea than just kind of holding property and just holding it to for the sake of holding it for development. I think that the property is prime for parking and any other opportunity that could come about. So, but I would like to hear from the developer in terms of what their intentions were, especially since it would take another year or so to put this back out and get a response back. So just at least information about that.
Thank you, Pro Tem Lanier. Commissioners, any additional discussion? Mr. Scott Evans, I'm not sure if we have a consensus or clear direction from the board. I know two commissioners said that they would like to hear from the developer. Did you give an opportunity, did you notify the organization that this item would be on the agenda tonight?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Evans?
Yes, I did let them know that this item would be on the agenda, and I sent them a link to the posted agenda items.
And also, did staff already speak to them? I know you mentioned that you tried to organize the two owners of the parcels to have discussions about the parcel and see what could come to fruition, and nothing was able to transpire. So staff has already done the due diligence and worked with the organization, correct?
Yes, I recommended that they have a discussion because I thought it was important if they're going to try to redevelop, or if the board was going to consider extending this agreement, that it even had a possibility to proceed. But I did not hear back that they had worked out any formal agreement.
Okay. I think that this is twofold. While I do want to hear from the organization just to see what their position would be, I do want to trust staff to just be able to take care of the nuances of negotiating, determining what direction they would go, and then just bringing us the best recommendation. So I'm kind of torn because I like Mr. Evans' recommendation about possible lease payments, but this is 3-4 years later. To give that option now moving forward is going to be great and recommendation. But as of right now, with that parcel of land, I'm kind of hesitant because I did not hear from the organization, and staff said that they've already done the work and due diligence. So to just continue to kick the can down the road is going to be concerning for me. I'd rather us just proceed and give staff clear direction. If they come and talk to us that they need a year, 2 years, 6 months, I think we just need to have staff determine what's the best plan of attack for that piece of land and come back with some recommendations. Because if we just wait till our next meeting, that's just going to take us another time frame of determining, of them just giving us a presentation when they haven't secured the land and they had an opportunity to do it leading up to this. So I wouldn't be supportive of waiting. I would just prefer for us to let it expire and move forward with the next steps. Additional comments, commissioners? There's two people that want to actually see a developer. There's one that does not. Anyone else? I think staff would need clear direction. So if we don't have any other comments from the commissioners, then Mr. Scott Evans, if you want to follow up individually so we can have clear direction so that we can decide. Because right now I think that we don't really have clear set direction as of yet until we figure out what we need to do.
Mr. Chair,
Mr.
So that we
Smith.
understand, the agreement has expired.
Mhm,
So we do no action tonight, that agreement is gone.
mhm.
You can have them come back in and maybe do another agreement, but right now, by doing no action, the agreement is expired and the property reverts back to,
Right.
CRA.
Well, yeah, to that point, I mean, any other additional comments from commissioners if they want to talk to staff later on? But as of right now, with no action, there's no agreement. Yeah, so conversation done. Commissioner McCoy, go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner
No,
Melanson.
I didn't really have anything to say. I mean, it's already expired. If he's already gone to talk with them, someone doesn't want to make a move, they don't seem to want to work together in terms of making anything happen. So to me, it seems like when they're ready, then they come to us. But I don't see where we need to do anything else beyond this point because we've done our part.
Agreed. Commissioner, hold on, Commissioner McCoy. Commissioner Botel, anything?
Well, yeah, my point really echoes what Commissioner Miller Anderson said. It's up to the parties now to come into some kind of agreement. The Valari Group can't do anything until the owners of the Charlie Dietrich property come to some agreement with them that they can use the property. I mean, the picture of the property is off the screen now, but if you look again at the picture, the upper rectangle or square, if you will, in the upper part, that's the park area. And it's no use to anybody right now until those two parties come to some agreement, which is why I asked in the beginning, can we in any way facilitate their coming together? I'm not sure that we can, other than to encourage them, because otherwise, we could always turn that into a parking lot. And that would be a tragedy. So there's really nothing that we can, I don't know that it serves us any real purpose to hear from the Valari Group until they are able to come to some agreement with the current owners of the Dietrich property.
Thank you. Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
So in deference to what was just said about Commissioner Botel and Miller Anderson, there's nothing, it's expired. They can't just walk back in and say that now we want to come to the table. I mean, this was a competitively solicited deal. I mean, then they would more or less have the only option of submitting an unsolicited proposal. But as it stands now, before us is an expired agreement. And Mr. Smith, to correct you, they never had site control. So this wasn't something that actually reverts back to us. We've always had it.
Yes.
So
Yes, sir.
you mentioned reverts back to us, but it never left us. So more or less, I think before us right now is, are we in the position to decide to ask staff to go back and have a conversation about extending or not? There's nothing else to come back because as it stands now, we would be going against our own solicitation to allow an open-ended, against our solicitation and the agreement to allow someone to just come walk back in after whatever legal agreement we have no longer exists. I mean, that now disenfranchises anybody else that would potentially have wanted to submit. So I think the decision needs to be tonight, are we inclined to support an extension? Otherwise, we have to move forward.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Botel, I'm sorry, Commissioner Melanson.
I think at this point, it sounds like we're probably ready to call the question. And then if we want to do anything outside of that, then we can move forward with it.
Well, excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
I'm trying to clarify because there's this belief that they can come back to us. There's no coming back to us.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Melanson.
that is not my thoughts. So that doesn't have anything to do with what we're voting on. So if we want to go ahead and call the question, we can. And then if there's something else we want to talk about afterwards, then we can. But that doesn't impact my vote.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Botel.
We actually don't have a resolution on the table, I believe, do we? We're simply hearing from staff with their explanation of the fact that the agreement has expired, and there's no action that we need to take as far as I know.
Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
Well, I beg to differ. So then what happens? So do we give staff direction as to go and put out a new solicitation? I mean, because we're literally going to find ourselves right back in this situation because it's not big enough for a parking lot. Hardly. You probably get 6, maybe 8 parking spaces that's pointed in diagonally, but I just don't understand. I mean, we're just gonna let it expire, and then what's the plan going forward? So I think we gotta think past the first move of just saying that it's gonna be expired. So I think there's this expectation that if it is expired, then what does the commission want to do with that?
To that point, Commissioner McCoy, the item for tonight is in reference to the agreement. The foresight of what we want to do next, I'm not sure if that was what the commissioner's intents were. I think it's just, do you want this to expire, or do we want to go back into extending the contract? If we want to talk about what we want to move forward with, I would like to hear from staff as what options we have. Because during our agenda review, we did bring up some of the nuances. I'm not sure if the other commissioners were able to talk about what we could do, but they were limited because we're still trying to decide if we're going to give them an opportunity to extend. So I guess to that point, if staff wants to take the time to go back since it is expired, I do have a question for Attorney Smith though. What time frame as commissioners do we have to extend the contract after expiration of these solicitations?
Well, you can set any time frame you want. I think we've already done one extension of the original agreement. We came back and we extended. Scott, when did we extend the original one?
In January of 2022.
So you did an extension of this agreement last year at this time. So that's been another full year. You could go back and offer another extension for whatever time frame you agree upon, but you have already extended it once in January of 22.
Okay, so we've already extended one time, and we could just keep extending if we choose. And I think one of my colleagues did state the concern is that the parcel is so small that we don't have real idea or vision as to what we can do without our partners there. So really, I'd prefer for staff to work out the best direction and give us some recommendation. Because if we hear from the Valari Group, they're going to ask for an extension. They're going to have to go back to the table. I just don't want us as me and my colleagues wasting our time to discuss this back and forth if there's no clear direction from staff. So my sentiments would be, my opinion is still to let the contract RFP expire and then have staff bring something back to us. So as of right now, I'm hearing the same thing. Councilwoman, Commissioner Botel, Commissioner
Yes.
Anderson. So I think we have clear consensus. If anyone else has any additional comments. Thank you, Mr. Evans. 5B.
Presentation and update on Marina Event Center refresh project, including painting and flooring. The acceptance of public comment cards are now closed. Mr. Chair, we have no comment cards.
We have no comment cards. Thank you. Mr. Jonathan Evans.
To the board, if I can have the Director of Neighborhood Services, Ms. Anita Jenkins, to make this presentation.
Welcome, Ms. Jenkins.
Good evening, Chair Lawson, Commissioners. We're here to provide an update on steps we've taken to bring back information to you all, as requested a few months ago, about refreshing the event center. During our budget discussions and listening to comments from several commissioners, listening to feedback from producers and event planners about the status of the event center, staff has undertaken quite a bit of research in looking at other venues of similar size and capacity as ours, talking to contractors who provide services for main elements that need refreshing in the event center, and just researching as staff for various options for the event center. And with that, we've looked at flooring options, we've looked at paint colors and options, etc. And we're here tonight to just give you an update on where we are and some suggestions that staff has in terms of bringing this item forward. As you all know, during the month of January, we set aside a few days for some deep maintenance and cleaning of the event center. We undertook some spot painting, carpet cleaning, furniture cleaning, cleaning of drains, steam cleaning of drains, etc., as well as doing a mini refresh in the back bathrooms that really needed a facelift and some additional amenities to make it more comfortable and useful for patrons, etc. We also undertook some major switch outs of bulbs to increase the lumens in the front bathrooms to increase the luminosity in those bathrooms. Replaced a few broken chip tiles, the mirror tiles that are up around the pavilion, and other types of ideas that we received. We also reached out for some professional help on fine tuning color recommendations. And I'm joined here by Ms. Karen Bowman, who may be familiar to you, who is an artist and designer who's assisted us in other artistic and design elements. And she and her team have given us some advice, and she's going to just walk you through, with your patience and indulgence, several slides to show you where we are in terms of recommendations. We've also been in collaboration with the city's Department of Procurement to put together a request or an invitation for bids based on the city's approved contractors, and that process closed a few days ago. So with your permission, we would like to come forth with a recommendation of contractor and recommendations in terms of flooring, with perhaps one alternate option, and colors for approval. And we're primarily coming back to you for approval because we know that the financial impact, the budgetary impact, is outside of administration's authority. So I'll just ask, before we turn to Ms. Bowman to walk you through the several slides, ask Mr. Evans just to also talk to you for a minute about the operation of the marina in light of the fact that there have been discussions about the forthcoming operations here at the event center.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Mr. Chair,
Mr. Evans, go ahead.
as this board, we just recently had a workshop in which we discussed the issues and concerns related to the Marina Event Center. We are currently negotiating with the Phase 2 development team for the next evolution of our Marina Village project. And part of those negotiations include leasing and management of the event center. I just wanted to quickly go over the timeframes for how those negotiations are proceeding. The developer, our goal is to bring an agreement to this board, which would allow the developer to immediately assume the leasing and renting of the vacant commercial spaces that are in this building. So that's the upstairs outdoor patio, and that includes the vacant commercial space, which is on the ground floor. It is our goal to have them be engaged in leasing that property site and building it out, and bringing restaurants to those vacant spaces to generate revenue as soon as possible. Our discussions have also been related to the eventual management of the event center space that we're in currently tonight. The timing of that eventual management will be linked to completion of the hotel that they're proposing to build, which puts that portion of management several years away from today. So we are proposing to make minor improvements since the CRA will be managing and running the event center space for the next several years. And they believe the funds, the maximum funds that are budgeted are $275,000 to make these minor improvements to help us to improve our ability to rent the facility, to improve it for use by the public and by this board and the city council as it currently is being used, as that will be continuing for the next 3 to 4 years until the hotel is constructed, if negotiations are finalized and approved by the board. So the minor improvements, which are very much needed, we will, during the negotiations that are ongoing, we'll attempt to recoup the value of those investments in the property that we're making right now, so that we can improve the facility for our use over the next years and not lose the value of those investments in the negotiated future management agreement.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if we may at this time, I'd like to introduce Ms. Karen Bowman to you.
Hello, everybody.
And she just has a few slides that I think you'll be excited about, if I may.
Thank you. And welcome, Ms. Bowman. Thank you so much for presenting tonight.
Okay, thank you for allowing me to be here. The presentation is called Color Concepts. And basically, our inspiration for the color palette for the Newcomb Hall Ballroom was inspired by the beautiful serene waters around Riviera Beach. We decided to choose a cool blue color palette inspired by the waters around here. And basically, we wanted to basically create a backdrop that would evoke tranquility, calmness, and serenity. Can you remove to the next slide? Okay. Okay, can you move back?
Sorry.
I apologize for that. This is Newcomb Hall Ballroom. As you can see here, this is the schematics for the ballroom. As I said, we selected a cool blue color tone for the ballroom. We decided to do the upper part of the wall with a light blue shade, which is called Magic Wand. The bottom half is done in a deeper cool blue shade called Blue Bow. Basically, the dichotomy between, or the contrast between the light and the dark basically gives a optical illusion in the room of the walls being taller. We also recommend, as you can see here on the side here, and number 2, is that we also recommend that you put a trim around the doors here. This would give a more elegant look to the room, doing the wider trim. Next.
Do that.
Oh, I'm
Sorry.
I apologize.
Is there more than one of us on there?
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, the Hatch Ballroom. We also brought the same unified color palette into the Hatch Ballroom. And as you can see, that we have a lighter tone, once again, the Magic Wand color at the top and the Blue Bow at the bottom. Now, of course, in the Hatch Ballroom, you're looking at a ballroom that is much smaller than Newcomb Hall. And of course, this serves this ballroom well because you have to remember the neutral cool tone color basically causes more reflection of light in the room. As a result of that, it makes the room more spacious, makes it look larger. And also, we recommend that you also utilize the bright white trim in the room, and also put trim around the doors. Next slide. Okay. As you can see here, we have 3 options for flooring. We basically were inspired by, for the flooring, we were inspired by, we decided to go with vinyl plank flooring, and it was inspired by the antique yachts and and sailing antiques yachts and sailing boats. They had beautiful wood on these boats. So we were inspired by that for the ballroom. So we selected a nice warm tone hickory. There is a deeper shade of hickory. As you can see here, there are two options. One is a more richer shade that's a bit darker, and one is more lighter, all connoting the sea and and sailing. The next one is a carpet, and the carpet is a beautiful wave pattern that mimics the ocean. It was inspired by the Singer Island waves that you see on the beach, and it's done in a beautiful array of blues, of indigo, ultramarine, aqua, and turquoise. Basically, in closing, this neutral palette would basically meet the needs of anyone who's renting the event center. Anyone's decor for weddings could be suited to this ballroom, and it would not conflict the colors that were selected. I think it would be a great refresh, and it would give a serene backdrop to any event that you're having here. And I think it represents the city well.
Thank you. And thank you for that presentation. Ms. Jenkins?
Thank you, Chair. If I may, I just wanted to answer a question about a third flooring option that I know we've received about a suggestion for marble. Marble flooring, we found, and as most of us know, would be very expensive and it's very slippery. It would be very dangerous. And even in looking at the luxury vinyl tile, we looked at a tile that had some texture to it because otherwise it could be a little slippery as well. We've taken the liberty of requesting a strike-through, which is a carpet design that we'd like to fine-tune when we bring back the recommendation to you at next month. And we've reached out and talked to several major flooring companies, and we're getting the strike through from, I think, the largest carpet manufacturer in the country that has quite a variety in different price points. So we're trying to be mindful of the budget by looking at durability and cleanability, et cetera, for the different flooring options. And there was also a question about the doors and the colors. And personally, if I could change the colors, I would. I think it would be a little bit more sustainable because they're very, very light when it comes from a design element. But we found that to adjust the color, to take all of this wood and trim down and refinish it would be cost prohibitive when you're talking way beyond the budget that we have. So the idea about beefing up the trim to give it a richer, more luxe look is, we think, an economical alternative to adjust the baseboards and the trim and perhaps add some molding to just give the walls more depth and be more attractive when it comes to inviting patrons into the event center. We've also taken the liberty of working with Ms. Regis Frazier, our event center manager, in managing the schedule. Just like we set aside some days for the major maintenance in January, we've looked at the calendar and reserved some time, if we're still on the same time path, to give us time to shut down the event center and to bring in the contractor to do the work and do it very, very nicely. We also will come back to you with a marketing and community outreach plan and something along the lines of preparing our public and our customers for the change and teasing what it will look like by having a display board, but also making sure that we're keeping people informed. You know, you go into hotels and ballrooms and they'll say something like, "Pardon our dust, and here's what it's going to look like, and bear with us." And we're going to try to minimize the time that we have to adjust events, maybe from room to room, et cetera, so that we're not closed down for a very lengthy period of time. So I'll stop there and see if you could give us any feedback or if you have questions, and hopefully we'll be able to answer them among the three of us. And we thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you for
Chair-
your comments. Commissioner Botel, go ahead.
Thank you. A comment and a question. Thank you, Mr. Evans, for addressing my agenda review question about potentially recapping some of the expenditures from the developer. I appreciate your looking into that. And then a question, did I not have the impression that we were going to go with the carpeting and not with the wood flooring? Was I mistaken when we had our agenda review? It sounded to me like the carpeting was the choice that we were making.
We have the two options. We still have to finalize a contract with the selected contractor, and we're being mindful of the budget. They're relatively close in price, and without getting into the bids, we just want to be sure that we are just getting the biggest or the best bang for the buck. So we have the two options of the luxury vinyl or the carpeting. Staff has a recommendation, but we want to be able to make a 100% recommendation and bring it back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners? So, Commissioner Pro Tem, go ahead.
Yeah, I had a couple of questions to ask you guys in the agenda review, and it was similar to Dr. Botel's in terms of us spending money. You said 275K? Is that was the price?
That is the budget, the amount that was set aside. So we hope that we don't
Right.
maximize that amount.
Yeah, and that was one of my concerns was the fact that, at first I did not like the deal that they were giving us to even take over the event center, where we were going to get $4 million in 50 years off of the event center, and then now to put additional monies into it. And I know this was set aside before, and they also said that, reminded me that this event center was a part of this deal, marina deal from the very beginning. So I understand maintenance to the building because we have to maintain it, we have to make it, functional, and deep cleaning and that kind of thing. But what I'm afraid of is that we're spending all of this money and then we give it to someone else, in terms of management and in terms of doing whatever to it. So I certainly would like to know about the recoupment of those monies from the developer, before we continue to spend money on the place.
Thank you, Pro Tem. Additional comments? Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, thanks. Miss Jenkins, you said 250,000, 275, which one was it?
We have 275,000 set aside in the budget. And let me clarify that when we established the budget and brought it to you all during the budget season and it was approved, we knew that we were hoping, based on our research, that would cover the flooring, the painting, and smaller expenses like we're talking the carpentry to put up the trim. We've expended a minor amount out of that budget for the bathroom refresh and the lighting changed, etc. So we don't anticipate exceeding that amount. And again, I don't want to get into the bid without bringing a bid document back to you in terms of the pricing, but we're fairly comfortable that we can get things done within that amount.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
what was the amount, Ms. Jenkins? Was it 250 or 270?
$275,000.
Okay, and then that was what was budgeted. So the work that was done last month in January did come out of that budgeted amount?
It came out of that line item budget. And I would, and
Thank you. So my next question is going to be this. I appreciate your dialogue, but I'm really trying to ask very specific questions to get specific responses. And not to cut you short, but I'm trying to arrive at somewhere, and I just need you to help me out in getting there. So the work that was that done by professionals or was that done by ambassadors? Because I noticed a lot of the painting that didn't seem to be what I would have expected to be something that was done by an outside firm or a professional painting company.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Jenkins.
if I may, Mr. Chair,
Please go ahead.
the painting was done by a professional painting contractor. The ambassadors undertook maintenance items that are within their daily purview of duties.
Thank you. And what was the professional painters, what was their scope?
The scope was to,
Like what exactly did they paint?
in the 2 bathrooms.
Oh, is that the professional? Because I was like just noticing it when I used it, like they had overpainting, and I was like, I just pray that this isn't what we paid professionals for, that got paint all onto the grab bars and that sort of thing. I mean, it just seemed to me, I was like, yeah, it's really that not that serious, but I was just kind of curious as to that's specifically what I had noticed, and that was where I was going. Um, what was that amount? Was that within the authority just to do those bathrooms?
As I recall, and I can get you the exact amount of the invoice, but around $2,000
Oh, okay.
for the work.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure at what point you saw the painting, but I'm sure that our clean and safe manager will address any
Not necessary.
splatter and make sure that it's removed if it's not removed.
No, it's not necessary. I noticed it, and then I was just wondering, was this a professional? You know, do we know what the cost of maintenance is? I mean, is that plush carpeting? Because if it is, that's being proposed up here, what do we anticipate as far as ongoing maintenance? Because it's much easier to take a dry wet mop or a Swiffer to do a laminate flooring, but obviously if we're going to be using that level of carpeting inside of a ballroom, I can imagine the moment a drink spills, that's going to stain in that carpet. So there has to be prospectively thinking about what the maintenance cost with having such plush carpeting inside a building like this, and how do we account for that, and what do we do? Do we now bring in an equipment for our ambassadors to be trained on how to routinely clean the carpet after, every 3 or 4 uses, or do we now also include that in our budget to have another outside carpet professional company to come in and clean it? Because clearly that's a easy thing. I remember there was an event in here and they were doing painting, and I'm like, I want to make sure we know what to expect and we don't have any hidden costs associated. At least it should be kind of contemplated as to what that's going to look like.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Ms. Jenkins.
I assure you, Mr. McCoy, that whatever flooring is chosen, we would have the manufacturer's specification for care and maintenance of the flooring. I could tell you what we currently do for the carpet that's on the floor. This is a commercial grade carpet, and the carpet that we purchase would be a commercial grade. It would not be a plush product. That's a certain type of carpet. It would be a commercial grade carpet. This carpet that's on the floor on a particular piece, it can be pulled up and replaced without replacing the entire carpet. I'm not sure if you realize, but that's the way we've maintained this carpet. We do have something called a red book for the ambassadors, where they have specifications and contractors and manufacturers that we go to. Part of the routine maintenance is to do spot cleaning, just like you would in your home with a small machine. If there's a spill that does not readily wipe up, you use the spot cleaning. Several times during the year, and I'd have to check with staff to tell you how often, we have a professional carpet cleaning company to come in and clean according to the manufacturer's specifications. It is quite a bit of upkeep for flooring. Even with the luxury vinyl tile, you wouldn't just swift the floors. They would have to be cleaned properly with the appropriate cleaning product. You can't just put water, you can't leave water on it. You have to make sure that it's removed. You don't put wax down on those types of floors, but what I found sometimes, and it depends on the product that you purchase, where the luxury vinyl tile will tend to come up. So we have to be sure that we're getting an underlocking floor, and we requested quotes for an underlayment because there is concrete under the floor. So we will follow the manufacturer's specifications. We will have warranties of work from the contractors, and the ambassadors will be trained in terms of regular daily maintenance that would be within their ambassador purview. And what they cannot do or should not be doing, we bring in a professional. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jenkins. Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. Ms. Jenkins, my personal sentiments is I would prefer to see the plank or even a tile. What I've seen throughout ballrooms throughout the country is that they have the the large chandeliers, the high ceilings with the glossy floors. I know that the concern with the slippery position, maybe even if it's a textured tile, but I think the plank would give us a better look than the carpet just for the usage of the ballroom for rental space. For just these general meetings, it's sufficient. But what we're trying to use and maximize with the space, I would prefer to see that personally, the plank or even a tile with possibly a gloss finish or a textured gloss finish would kind of allow for this ballroom to pop a little bit more. So if we can look a little bit more into that, I'm not a big fan of the carpet. I've never been a fan of the carpeted room for ballrooms. And when I look for event spaces, this doesn't really attract or intrigue somebody to want to use the space as much. Because this, of course, is dated, so I do support and appreciate the refresh that we're doing, and I know the timing as well. Whenever the marina is going to be taken over for management purposes, that we still want to make sure that we incorporate this refresh. And thank you, Mr. Evans and Ms. Jenkins, for addressing the concerns of where those dollars are going to be coming from, and the fact that we'll recoup some of it. So we do need to do the refresh, but if we can look a little deeper into how we're going to do it. My only question for you is the time frame. How long are we projecting for the marina to be down for this renovation to take place?
I believe we have set aside about 8 to 10 days for the work. We'd schedule the work, but I could check the time and let you know where we have on the calendar. Now, if we're able to get the product in, we might have to adjust the time. When we come back with the recommendation, we'll have the exact time frame that we have to be down. Mr. Chair, there's one thing that I failed to mention to you all, just so you know. We have done the research, and I hear you and agree with you about the texture to the floor. We do have the samples in hand. So what I will do is have staff put up we're going to have a vision board so you could feel the plank and see the carpet strike through and see a large sample of what the paint would look like. When and if we go with the luxury vinyl tile, because of the sound echo, we would have to put up some sort of baffling on the walls. And that's what we need to come back with. We know we have to do that. So that would be a change to the walls to try to absorb some of the sound.
Is the sound barriers on the walls versus the foundation barriers under the plank, the sound barriers under the plank wouldn't be sufficient?
It wouldn't be sufficient. It's because the floors are not totally flat. The LVT would be floated. It's called floating.
Understood.
Well, you're familiar with it. It
Thank
would
you.
be floated along.
Understood. Okay. Additional comments, commissioners? No.
Yeah, so,
Ms. Millison, go ahead.
so I don't quite understand it as much as you would. So can you just explain what you were saying a little more? Because, so are we saying that we don't need to put the soundboards on the wall if you can do something in the floor? Or you're saying we can't do the floor thing?
No, do the LVT
What is
because
that?
of the luxury vinyl tile, the
Okay.
tile. And it has the look of wood
Mhm.
without the maintenance of wood and the cost of wood.
Mhm.
We'd have to put an underlayment because of the moisture and the sound, because of the foundation that we have here. So we'd have to do that with that product, but we'd have to put up some sort of sound baffling. And we just need the sound engineers to tell us exactly what that would look like. Once we talk with the contractor, we'll take care of that so that we minimize the echo. So you can imagine you have a dance and you're wearing heels and the click, click, or you're having a meeting and people are walking back and forth. We just want to minimize that distraction as much as possible.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Evans, as well, I wanted to address, and if we could talk about the facilities maintenance plan. I know that we talked about that previously in other meetings, but during your comments, if you could address the facilities maintenance plans and what direction we're going to have and when you'll be presenting that to the board or the council or the commissioners or the city council. Thank you. Any additional comments from Ms. Jenkins or staff? Thank you so much for the presentation, Ms. Jenkins. We appreciate it. We look forward to the refresh.
Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, item 6B, regular agenda.
Resolution number 2024-06, Amending the bylaws of the Revere Beach Community Redevelopment Agency. The acceptance of public comment cards are now closed. Mr. Chair, we have one comment card.
Motion for resolution number 2024-06.
Second.
Motion been made and properly seconded. Mr. Evans?
To the board, this presentation will be made by CRA attorney, Mr. Chris Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At the last meeting, when we did an amendment to the board, to the bylaws regarding the agenda, it was mentioned by the board that we should also bring forth the non-interference language that is found in your charter of the city into the bylaws of the board. And so what you have before you is a resolution in which we have the exact language that's taken out of your charter and put into the bylaws of the board, minus the information regarding the mayor, because the mayor is not mentioned in the bylaws of the CRA. So that is the only deletion we have from the language that's in the in your charter that we're putting now into the bylaws.
Thank you, Attorney Smith. Public comment, please.
Mary Bram.
Mary Bram, Riviera Beach. I would just like to say too that thank you as a board for coincide with getting your bylaws to also coincide with exactly some of what the city is, because I've always said the CRA is incorporated in the city. I made mention about this before. I know your CRA meetings are rarely attended, but for those that do attend, to go through this package here, and when it is noted here, the item here 6B, the package, you have to sit there and just go all through the pages. It does not coincide with the item number, like this is 6B here. And in the package here, it has the resolution dated down to the bottom. And some of the pages are not even dated with the resolution. So audience, when you see 6B up here, Ms. Brown put that 6B up there. I made mention about this a couple times, to have that straightened out, to have whoever do these agendas, we cannot follow along with what your agenda item here is posted, 6A or 6B. And we get the package here, and we have to sit there and follow through. When I came over here, this is what I came over here for her, to show me where is the item for the bylaws here that are posted in here. I think that these things here can be corrected, and these things here can be clarified. Just like you're doing the bylaws, your bylaws are also should implement how your procedures are also followed in your bylaws as well as your charters. So if we're gonna do the business, and if you expect for the residents that do participate, and even if you do not see their faces in here, trust me, they see you, they hear you, and they're taking everything in. I know that for a fact, personally as well as active. I know that for a fact. So all we say is the chairperson, you're the chair. And I've said this numerous of times. Your board is directed on the things that also impacts how we are to be governed. So that's what I wanted to make mention. So I'm hoping that this will be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, ma'am. Comments from the board?
I have a, Chair.
Good. Pro Tem Lanier, go ahead.
Yeah, I think on the agenda review, I asked a couple of questions in regards to this. I know I was the one that brought this to be a part of the bylaws in terms of non-interference, but what I wanted to ask, and I think I couldn't get Mr. Smith, we talked about this being a limit to the board's flexibility in making decisions, or will it be, or if how does it impact the CRA's ability to engage with city officials and stakeholders? I just wanted to be clear on that, about how that works because of the quote unquote non-interference.
Attorney Smith, go ahead.
you look at line 35 and 36 are the guts of the amendment. They just shall give, no one from none of the commissioners shall give orders to any such officer or employee, either publicly or privately. That doesn't prohibit you engaging with developers or anyone else. It's the exact employees of the CRA. So if you look at line 34, 35 and 36, that gives you your direction on what this covers.
Okay, and then also too, this is the last question I had was, so what if I do? What happens to me?
Under your code, it says that you will be given due process, and that came up in another agenda review. But there's no definition within, we take this out of your code, there's no definition in your code, or quite frankly, in a couple of codes that I've been able to research the last couple of hours, no definition or steps for due process. Due process is defined as notice and opportunity to respond. But within your own code of the city of Riviera Beach, there's no step-by-step due process enumerated in that code. And so there's no step-by-step due process enumerated in this. And it would be my suggestion that we do enumerate that, given the concerns that have been brought up by this board. Most cities and most codes just references the terms due process if someone violates it. And this references due process, but we could go further and do a step-by-step definition of the due process if that is warranted. And I would suggest, if we're going to do that here, that you look to in your other capacity as a city council to do the same thing on the city council.
Okay, that's reasonable, because that's really what I wanted to know, because a lot of times you have these rules and then there is no there's no consequence if it does happen. So I certainly want the board to think about that and moving forward in terms of how we will address those issues.
There is a consequence. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. There is a consequence even in your code that to be subjected to I think it's Florida statute, and with us is 112, but within your code, there is a statute that you're subject to for removal by the governor and everything. But the problem is the due process. How do you get to that point?
Right.
So you're even in your own ordinance, you say if you violate this, you're subject to these sanctions, but it doesn't enumerate how you get to that point of getting subject to the governor and the ethics and things of such.
Thank you. What's up?
Go ahead.
Attorney Smith, can you just get with our city attorney, Attorney Nguyen, and just come up with clear language and direction for due process and make some presentations to the board so that we can take a look at what this would look like? Because having that discussion of due process and it not being clearly outlined in either the city or the CRA, I think is going to be something that we can discuss. So is that something you could get with our city attorney and come up with some
And I just
direction?
want to put on the record that once this came up, there's a network of city attorneys that we all deal with. And I did call a lot of different cities attorneys. And so this isn't unique with Riviera Beach. A lot of cities and organizations don't have due process spelled out. I think they should, but I just want to say in defense of your own ordinances, you're not, unique in this.
So colleagues, that would be the discussion. Looking at the ordinance, and I know that was a question that Pro Tem Lanier addressed, but is this something that we want our city staff to look into about due process and having a clear depiction of what this should be? Or do we want to continue to leave it vague like most municipal governments have done? Commissioner McCoy, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to take a step back, Mr. Smith. You said you need due process for a complaint for recommending of removal by the governor or the commission on ethics. Is that what I heard you say?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You said
If you look at
no.
lines,
I'm saying you were speaking in general. You said a person should have due process before recommending a removal by the governor. I believe that's what I heard you say.
under the city ordinance, in reading your city ordinance, when you talk about interference, it says any such action taken in contravention of this restriction shall be malfeasance within the meaning of section 11251. And it talks about, you should be given due process. Yes.
No, sir. You spoke not relating to the document, that you spoke about due process, and then you said when a person goes before the Commission on Ethics or before the governor removes them. Don't look at it. You was just freestyling. You weren't looking at a document. Do you recall saying that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Cool. I did bring it up to you. So I don't understand a couple things about this. Particularly, Florida statute sets forth CRAs and is very specific about how that CRA is supposed to function. 163.356 subsection 3B says the powers of a community redevelopment agency shall be exercised by the commissioners thereof. So in the exercising of that authority, not of the board of commissioners, but if you want to pull that statute, it says specifically exercised by the commissioners thereof. How do you now justify, negotiate, or can even suggest that you have an interference when the statute says that the powers of the agency shall be exercised by the commissioners? And statute doesn't limit the exercising of that authority, but you're going to come into the bylaws and create something that could potentially conflict with the exercising of that authority?
You can always limit your authority. And that's what this would do in your bylaws. You would limit that authority. The statute gives you the authority. And now as a board, you're saying, okay, we have that authority, but we do not want other members of the board interfering with individual employees of it. So you as a board, by passing this, would limit your authority. The statute doesn't prohibit you from limiting the authority of the commissioners. It just gives you the authority, but you can always limit it yourself.
Right, but the statute doesn't mandate an executive director. It says the agency may employ an executive director. So similarly, in the same fashion, what I'm suggesting to you is, if the authority is vested by statute, how can you create a bylaw that in essence will diminish the authority that is statutorily granted?
Same answer. Just because the statute gives you the authority to do something, you as a board can limit that authority as a board and a determination of the board.
See, but that's where I disagree, because if you look at the statute, I want you to follow along and I'll read the sentences with you again. The board is not granted that authority. Listen to what it says. The governing body, no, that's not it. The powers of a community redevelopment agency shall be exercised by the commissioners thereof. And from the statutory construction purposes, and I want you to take note of this, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, 163.356, subsection 3B, designates and delegates that authority to the commissioners. And from a statutory construction standpoint, if you look at the very next section, which is letter C, 3C, the legislature was very intentional in deciding to say specifically the governing board of the county or municipality. So if it was the desire of the legislature to decide to say that the board can now reduce one individual commissioner's authority that they can exercise, I think it would have been plainly stated and it would have referred to as the board. So I think you want to be clear on this, because I would argue, right, that any imposition of any kind of non-interference may impose or hinder my right that's statutorily granted to the commissioner, not to the board. Do you follow what I'm saying, Mr. Smith?
Yes, I'm following what you're saying, but you're still just neglecting. When you look at that statutory interpretation, the statute gives authority for many things, be it the CRA or many things. Statute gives authority. You can limit your authority, but as a board, by voting 4 members in this bylaws, you can limit your own authority. Just because the statute puts it out there, that doesn't mean that's it. The statutes, Florida statute, are replete with giving authorities to cities for everything, but cities go in within themselves and limit what they can do.
Mr. Smith, I would really encourage you to look at this again, because if you look at this whole entire section, there is a clear delineation when the statute refers to a commissioner, and then it refers to a board of commissioners. A board of commissioners is the collegial body, as you know. A commissioner is each individual commissioner. And if you go down to that same section number 2, it delineates what a board of commissioner is, And then in section 3, it delineates what a commissioner is. And the authority is granted with the commissioner. If it was the legislature's intention that the Board of Commission has the authority to exercise the powers, it could have very well done that, and this is within their prerogative, Mr. Smith. I think you know where I'm going, and this is very much how these cases are determined. It's about the legislative intent, because if it was spelled out to be in that fashion, I think they would have been consistent throughout that whole entire section in saying Board of Commissioners. So I have no problem with submitting to a non-interference, but I think what you're suggesting goes against the very statutory, and I'm not talking about interpretation. This is plain language, Mr. Smith. Section 2 refers to Board of Commissioners. The governing body shall appoint a Board of Commissioners. That's very clear. Section 3 refers to individual commissioners that have that authority to exercise the powers. So, I think if you're going to present this, I think seemingly this bylaw change would conflict with what the statute says, because the statute, again, is very clear and says commissioners thereof, not Board of Commissioners. So I would argue that I'm exercising my commissions when I come in and I want to meet with the project manager for the CRA, and which I ironically have ran into him out in the field meeting with businesses, and I join in on the conversation. I'm a sovereign commissioner under this. So I would really challenge you to look at this. Not to mention, I said this to you in the agenda review, I don't understand why we would go ahead and implement something like this, because the city doesn't even have set forth any policies or procedures as to what due process is. And you've announced here today, and you said it yourself immediately when you said it, I wrote it down, that in order for a person to have been sent or filed an ethics complaint by way of something from a board, there has to be due process, or even, you even said it, the governor. And I've not had any conversations with you regarding that, but on the 24th, I believe it was, or the 31st, that's specifically what happened. So you're going to be held to that, Mr. Smith, and I would really challenge you to go back, because I am going to, if I have to do a writ of cert personally, what you're saying doesn't make sense. A bylaw change will then infringe upon my authority as the vested authority as a commissioner, because if the legislature wanted it to be the vested authority of the CRA commission, then they would have done it. And one bylaw change cannot change what the statutory intent is. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner McCoy. Additional comments from the board?
Yes, I just wanted to say, Chair.
Please, Pro Tem, go
I
ahead.
just wanted to say when we talk about non-interference, some of the times we're talking specifically about Mr. McCoy in regards to his treatment of employees, of staff, of council people, and his interference with them in their duties for the city or the CRA. So not only does this apply to anyone who harasses and bullies employees or council or other staff members, this is to make sure, the reason why I asked, well, what happens if you do? I asked that specifically because I want to ensure that whatever happens, it is something that is a consequence for that type of behavior. When you have a council person who bullies and harasses, physically assaults people, then you have a situation where you have to make sure that the staff, the council, and the people who work for the city and CRA are protected. So this one piece is just to show that we are serious about safety. We are serious about people who are bullying and harassing other employees, and we're serious about it. And this is just one step of trying to ensure the safety of the people who work at this city, the residents in this city, and the staff members who come work day after day to do the work in the business of the city or the CRA, and not to be harassed or bullied for it.
Additional comments from the board?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Botel, go ahead.
I read the section 163.356 somewhat differently from Mr. McCoy. I read section B as saying, and I'll quote, "The powers of a community redevelopment agency shall be exercised by the commissioners thereof." That's clear, by the commissioners. It does not say by individual commissioners. In fact, the next sentence says, "A majority of the commissioners constitutes a quorum for the purpose of conducting business and exercising the powers of the agency and for all other purposes." So I would expect that Mr. Smith might be taking a look at this and giving us a legal opinion on it so that we can rely on the legal counsel that we have employed to do so. Thank you.
Additional comments from the board? No further comments. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
We do, not for this item, but general public comment card.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Commissioner Botel,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy,
No.
Chair Pro Tem Lanier,
Yes.
Chair Lawson. That vote passes 4-0 with, 4-1, 4-1 with Commissioner McCoy dissenting.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We're going to go into public comments. Comments from the public shall begin at 7:30, unless public comments shall begin unless there's no further business of the sitting, which in the event it shall begin sooner. In addition, if an item is being considered at 7:30, then comments from the public shall begin immediately after the item is concluded. Please be reminded that the CRA Board of Commissioners has adopted rules of decorum governing public conduct during official meetings, which has been posted at the front desk. In an effort to preserve order, if any of the rules are not adhered to, the commission chair may have any disruptive speaker or attendee removed from the podium, from the meeting, or the building. Please govern yourselves accordingly. Madam Clerk?
Mary Bram, followed by Doretta Polk.
Once again, Miss Mary Bram, Riviera Beach. If you see here, general public, I am wearing, for once, Black Lives Matter mask. Why Miss Bram is wearing this mask here? Not just because that we are Black, because for Miss Bram, all lives matter. But I'm going to talk about, since it's Black History Month here, I'm going to talk about where we are at. Today, it was a shooting up at the Palm Beach Gardens Mall. And from their assessment, it was gang related. They would do a brief presentation later. But who are we? When we say injustice for policing, housing, health, in general in society, and we as Black African Americans, that we can kill and shoot our own. Oh, but there's no justice there. There's no injustice there. Because some Blacks there, you can't have it both ways. We have to be a society of Black individuals that say, your life matters just as much as the ant crawling on this earth here. We need to check ourselves. And not just saying that it goes out into our race, but since it's Black History Month here, where do we as Blacks go? How can we be better? How can we contain in society when we fight for housing, health, economic developments? But what about the shootings that goes into our communities? Where are the outrage for that? Where are the cries that said, enough is enough, you young people and older people, enough is enough? We don't see that outcry. But let the police do something. Or you can galvanize. You can do those type of things like that. But that's wrong. So we as Black Americans, we do need to say that our lives matter, whether it is injustice that's displayed everywhere. But when we do it, we need to have an outcry. Our children is suffering. Our communities are suffering at the hands of we the power. And again, happy Valentine's Day to each and every one. And let that be love that comes straight from the heart.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you.
Doretta Polk.
Welcome, Ms. Polk.
Good evening, Council. My name is Doretta Polk, and I just want to wish the entire Council, the City Manager, Mr. Jonathan Evans, the Attorney, the CRA Director, Mr. Evans, and also Mrs. Anita Jenkins. Happy Valentine's Day. And I want to wish also blessings for the entire month of the Black History Month. I want to go and congratulations to Councilwoman Kashamba Miller Anderson and Councilwoman Dr. Julie Battelle. They got the endorsement of the Palm Beach Post, and that was a very, very, very distinguished honor that they got. And I want to thank you all for all your service. I want to talk about last week. I went to a seminar that Miss Shirley, Councilwoman Shirley Neely put on at the Brooks Center. It was very enlightening. She had all the found care, all the health district come and corroborate and just tell us what will be for the city of River Beach, the citizens. And I want to also talk about we had this CDC came yesterday at Lindsay Davis. They did an awesome seminar concerning, they had Citibank there, representatives, and they did it awesome about the national fraud and also about AARP, the fraud, the things that's happening. And it's mostly our seniors that it's happening to because when we are targeted for basically for our emotions and caring for our family, and they would call us and they gave us different scenarios. They couldn't go into details, but it enlightened each and every one of us. I wanted to give the uh, Mr. Jonathan Evans, who was in attendance, and also Miss Anita Jenkins. It was phenomenal. I would like to give the number for the National Fraud Hotline, 833-372-8311. The AARP Fraud Agency, 877-708-3360. And when we talk about things that happen between our culture, it is awful. It is awful. But I'll go on with that the next time.
Thank you for
Happy
your comments.
Valentine's to everybody.
Happy Valentine's. Thank you, madam. Any additional public comments, Madam Clerk?
There are no additional comment cards.
Thank you. Discussion by Executive Director.
Yes, Mr. Chair, a couple of items that were brought up as part of today's discussion concerning the commercial grant program. In order to facilitate providing for expediency concerning the processes of those grants, we would have to bring the policy back before the board for authorization to provide for those, for the executive director to effectively make that decision based on the items that are provided to us. And so if it is the board's pleasure, we can certainly get that queued up and placed on your agenda. And I certainly think that that is going to help expedite persons participating in the process because it is a significant cash flow issue. So if it is the board's pleasure, and I believe that there has been legislative intent derived by tonight's meeting, that we can effectively bring that back for your consideration. The next item is concerning facilities management. That's more so on the city side, but you will see an agenda item most likely at your next meeting that will speak to a public solicitation that we're bringing forward for consideration for the city council to look to contract out the services for median maintenance. And then we anticipate that it would free up about 30% of our existing crews, our public works crews time. And so with that additional time, we are then going to transition our staff to then becoming and creating a bona fide facilities management division within the Public Works Department. So you'll see that item come before you. And then we're also going to provide for career expansion and growth. So it's going to be a great opportunity for people to learn a skill and a trade, and we'll certainly accommodate that. But that will be the team that will help do your public facilities management and maintenance, both here in the city and then also working with the CRA. So that's an item that's coming back before you on the city council side for consideration. So that speaks to that item, and we believe that we will be able to transition those employees to that and try it out, and then build out and have the bona fide department or division functioning in full capacity as part of your budget for the next fiscal year. But they will transition those responsibilities immediately if the board is so inclined to support providing for contractual services on median maintenance for the city. And that concludes my comments concerning the items that were discussed as part of the meeting.
Just for clarity, you said facilities management will be on the next meeting, not next week, but you're talking about the first meeting in March?
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Evans.
that's one of the communications I just sent back to the staff because I did review the agenda item today. So it was supposed to be on the agenda that you reviewed. And so I'm waiting on a response back from staff. So most likely it probably can make it, but if not, most likely definitely your first meeting in March.
It looks like the agenda is not too voluminous, so I think we can possibly get it in there if we can get it completed, so
yeah.
they can be posted for tonight for commissioners review.
We can certainly do that. And the
Thank
funds
you.
for the contractual services are already budgeted funds, so it is not anything that the city is, pulling from any other accounts. There is monies that are budgeted for it, and there's no reduction in positions. Those positions would be reclassified in subsequent budget cycles to be facilities management versus ground maintenance and the like.
And that would alleviate some of the additional costs that we have for the repairs and things to the facilities we do have, and also the plans that are coming on board. So thank you.
And to that point, Mr. Chair, related, we are also looking to some of the functions that we have contracted out, possibly looking to insource that because that's a significant amount of time that we now will be able to alleviate. So we've had the conversation about custodial possibly coming back to be something that we manage, but that's a bigger, more in-depth conversation. But there's some significant savings and career opportunities by looking to make some of these modifications that we're proposing.
Thank you. Commissioner McCoy, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you. To
Please.
the grant item, Mr. Evans, the policy would in effect, we would need to have a policy that will address the spending levels. And I don't recall, Mr. Scott Evans, what those grant amounts were, but I know for foreign auto, I think that was somewhere over 80,000 between the two, the signage grant and the property grant. Do we know just what that amount, the limit is on those?
Yes, the limit on the signage grant is $12,000, and on the commercial grant side, the maximum grant that the CRA can issue is $60,000 per application.
So even though the cost was up to 89, that's where we were limited at?
Yes, if I think the 89 is the total cost of the project, but the 60 is the maximum that the CRA would contribute to any commercial grant improvement, and the 12 is the maximum for an individual signage grant.
Okay, so that said, Mr. Jonathan Evans, I guess there would have to be some sort of modification of the authority if this is going to be done administratively, and it doesn't seemingly come back to us, because if the very purpose is for us to streamline it, then.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
So we would have to craft it in a way similar to that, when you do provide the authority for expenditures over the manager's authority, we craft it that you do provide the situation that gives me that authority specifically for that item as it relates to budgeted funds. So we'd have to craft it in a way that still keeps in what the original intent about the spending limit, but it's specific to this project that I do have, or the executive director does have the authority to expend monies that are budgeted for that particular program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Comments from general counsel?
No comments, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Statements from the board, starting with Commissioner McCoy.
Sir.
Commissioner Miller Anderson.
Happy Valentine's Day, everyone.
Commissioner Pro Temp Lanier.
Yes, on February 22nd, my office, in conjunction with the Coalition for Black Student Achievement, will have a program here right across the hall in the Hatcher Room called A Portrait of a Graduate. It is a event/seminar regarding what qualities should your child possess upon graduation from high school. This is a very important event, given the fact that we're trying to do everything that we can from the city in any perspective in regards to the schools and their performance. In addition to that, next month, we're also having a interest meeting for any resident, business owner, participant, anyone who is interested in the city's education committee. That first one will be February 27th from 6 to 7. And then the next one is going to be on March the 3rd. I got to get the time for that, but it'll be here as well.
Thank you, Pro Tem Lanier. Commissioner Botel?
Thank you. Just a reminder that on March 2nd, we'll be having the second annual Black Family Wellness Expo. It'll take place over at the Inlet Grove Community High School, and you're welcome to come from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Free screenings and information, immunizations, cholesterol, blood pressure, diabetes. It's going to be a very comprehensive event, and I hope to see you there. It's sponsored by the West Palm Beach chapter of the Links Incorporated. And I want to take a moment just to recognize Anita Jenkins for her leadership on the Palm Beach County Housing Steering Committee. We met today and we heard about the 3 RFPs that were issued as part of that plan, workforce, affordable, and for sale. But I'm so proud that in large measure, because of Ms. Jenkins' leadership and the fact that they respect her so much, Riviera Beach was chosen to be the city to implement the action items that align with that housing plan. And that pilot program will become the guide for other cities and municipalities. So we're working hard to ensure that our residents have affordable housing. We know that that's a primary goal of Ms. Jenkins, and we applaud her for her work in that area. I want to say thank you to all the folks at Lindsay Davis today. We had a great party over there, great Valentine's party. I served a lot of good food, and happy Valentine's Day to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day to all. With no further business, meeting's adjourned.